So you have successfully created your spaceship, and now you want to add a higher level of detail to this object to make it a bit more custom and more personalized. So I have this shape here, and I'm going to use Maya's quad draw. So first thing I would recommend is that you hide your image plane. Sometimes these things can be extremely close to your model, to your object, and when you want to look at it, your image plane is in the way. So you can either delete it or hide it. In my case, I'm just going to hide it. So is my layer, and there we go. Alright, second thing I want to do is turn on my wireframe unshaded. This is going to allow me to see my geometry easier, and it will also allow me to know that this object is live. So as soon as I click on this object, I'm going to go to Modify, Make Live, and now you can see that my geometry is this kind of dark shade of green. Okay. Second thing I need to do is go to Mesh Tools, Quad Draw, and I can create an object on there. So if I left mouse click and hold, there's actually a dot underneath that cursor. When I let go, you'll be able to see that dot right there. And if I click again, I've got 4 dots, okay? And if I hold shift, in between those 4 points, it creates this quad. Now I can click on that vertex, and change the shape. I can click on this edge and change the shape. If I hold Control and click, I'm actually creating more subdivisions. Okay? So it's pretty straightforward. If I click 2 points here and hold shift, it creates a quad. Click 1 point there. There's my quad. Something like that. So it's connecting everything like this. Okay? Alright. So I'll add a few more points. I'm just going to kind of freestyle this shape. I don't really have anything in mind in terms of design-wise. So I'm holding shift. Alright. Let's say I want this to be some sort of tube or some sort of pipe. I don't know. And add another shape. And I don't know. That's just a funky shape that I have on here. I'll hold shift to finish that quad. Let's put another 2 points here and right there. Okay. So when I'm happy with the shape that I've created, I'm going to press W, which is a move tool. I'll right mouse click and go to object mode, and if I press Control 1, you'll see that this shape is conformed to my spaceship. I'll press Control 1 again to go back in, from the isolated view. Now this object is still connected to this spaceship. It's got this dark green, so I have to make it not live. So I'm going to go back to Modify and turn off the Make Live. So here's my shape. I can select any number of faces, extrude, push that out, scale it down, create any shape I want on here, extrude it again, maybe I'll scale it down. So now the part I'm doing right now is a little bit more freestyle, and it's totally depends on what you want to do with this. I'll select all the other faces around here and extrude that. Like so. I'll change the offsets. So maybe it's smaller numbers like 0.1. Let's try 0.01. Okay. And I'll extrude it again. I don't know what this is, but let's double click on the outside edge. And I'm going to bevel it. So I'm just highlighting the outside edge of this weird shape I just created. Inside edge here, that, this. And we'll go to Edit Mesh, Bevel, and I'll add another segment, Object Mode, and there we go. I got this really funky thing on here. If I press 3, it'll smooth it out. And that's just the shape or design that you could put on your ship. All right, obviously you want to make sure that it has a similar theme. Okay. Next, I'll teach you how to use the extrude along a curve to create like a fence. Or not a fence, but like a handrail. Okay. So I'll make this object live again. So modify, make live, and I'll go to Mesh Tools, Quad Draw, and I'm going to simply create 4 points. I'll hold Shift, and let's create a few more. Create a point here. So I'm trying to create like a round shape. That's why it's taking me a little bit longer. And I'll hold Shift. So let's do this here. I'll do that. So this is the shape I'm going for. So this is actually going to be my handrail. All right, believe it or not. And then I'm going to use an EP curve to extrude along there. So I'll create the same shape right next to it. 2, 3, 4. Hold Shift. Hold Shift. Shift. And you can adjust these things, these points later if you wanted to, or you can do it now. I would suggest that you make it look perfect now. Alright. So we're just going to assume that this is a very cartoony looking handrail. That's why it's my excuse for not making it perfect. Alright? Okay. And let's see. Okay, so now I'll go to Object Mode. And I'll make this guy not live. So modify, make not live. So these are my 2 new pieces of geometry. I'm going to extrude them both like that. And then I'll take this outside edge and bevel it. Okay. Change the fraction down just a little bit. And next thing I'm going to do is actually create an EP curve in my side view. So let me go to my side view. This object is a little bit off. And I'm just going to rotate it. So just press E. And since it's still on the surface of my object, see, it's still there. Right on here. Okay. So now I'll go to Create Curve Tool, EP Curve Tool. And I'll click here. Now this EP Curve Tool is one linear, so I'll go to Create Curve Tools, EP Curve Tool option box, and change it to 3 cubic. Create this kind of shape here. And I'm happy with that. I'll go into my perspective view, modify center pivot and move this over here so that this EP curve lines up with that face, and then I'll duplicate it and move it over like so. Okay, and then I think I'm going to rotate it just a little bit like that. Okay. Now these two objects are one mesh, so I'm going to go to face mode, highlight all of those faces, and go to mesh separate. So that makes them two individual meshes. I'll select these faces here. Okay, make sure I'll deselect that one. I'll hold shift, select that curve, and then press Control E, which is a shortcut for extrude. And I'll add divisions. And there you go. I'll change the, I don't want to change the thickness, but it's a very thick handrail. So I'm actually going to go step back a little bit. Select these faces, press R, and scale this down. I like that size a little bit better. Scale this down. So now when we select those faces and extrude and add more divisions, well, there we go. Okay, now I'll repeat the same task here. So I'll select these faces, hold shift, select this curve. Sometimes you have to go back in object mode, go to face, hold shift, select that curve, press Control E, and increase the subdivisions. Alright. So now I'm going to combine these two shapes. Mesh combine, and we'll add. And the cool thing with the quad draw is that you can use it on anything. So I'll go to modify, make live, mesh tools, and then I'll click on quad draw, and I'll create this shape here. Or an easy way is probably simply using a polygon cylinder and duplicating it. So I'll do it that way. So modify make not live, go to object mode, and then kind of delete that shape there. We're going to create polygon primitive cylinder. Go back into my side view. I'll hold shift, and there's my cylinder. I go to my front view. I'll press R and scale that wide. Move it like that. And because I want to make this low poly, I'll go into my attribute editor, click on the poly cylinder 3 and change the subdivisions to 8. So now when I press 3 on this object, you're going to see that it gets a little bit weird at the ends here. So I'll simply delete the caps. Hold shift to deselect. So I'm deleting the caps. I'll press delete. Object mode. I'll press Control 1 again to bring back my object. So now when I press 3, it's smooth. Press Control D. I'll move it down like that. Kind of align it. Control D, move it down. And if I press Shift D, sometimes it would do something a little different, but it didn't work there, so don't worry about pressing Shift D. Control D again, move it down. Control D, move it down right there. And there we go. There's our ladder. I'll press 3 on this. And I don't know where this ladder leads to, but we could create a little hatch right here. So I'll simply take these two faces, Control E, change the offset. I'll add an edge loop right about here. I'll select these two faces, press Control E, and maybe push it back like so. And I'll add an insert edge loop tool right here, right there, and press 3. And there's a little hatch. Okay. And if we wanted to add maybe like a handle on here, then we'll do that. I'm actually going to combine all of the elements for my ladder by holding Shift. I'm going to Mesh Combine. And if I wanted to rotate this, I'll simply hold D and V and snap this to the top of my shape. My rocket ship, press E to rotate and move it like that. See? It's a little more center. And we'll create a very basic polygon cube in my side view. So I'll hold Shift. I'll go to vertex mode, bring these guys like that. In my front view, I'll align it to where I want to put that handle. Move it over like that. I'll go to my perspective view, click on the top and the bottom of this cube. I'll hold Shift and click on the up arrow. No, let's actually just press Control E and move it that way. I'll press W, push them both that way. I'll select that face, press Control E and W. I'll press R, scale it flat. I'll press Control E again and change the offset to 0.02. Let's try 0.1. There we go. 0.1 works. I'll press Control E again and push it out. So now when let's delete these guys right there. Let's delete these faces. And then if I press 3, I get this really weird thing going on here. So I'm gonna press 1. Oh, okay. I gotta step back a little bit. Okay. So let's change the scale of that. Okay. I'll press W, Control E again. Move this out. Press delete. And there we go. Go to object mode, and then, so that's my shape. I'll move it right here onto the surface. That's a little bit off, so I'll go to modify center pivot. I'll rotate it to try to match the same angle of my rocket ship. Kind of looks like an old school phone. But as soon as we press 3, smooths out. And if I wanted to, I could press Control D and move it over here, rotate it, push that in the geometry like so. So these are just little ways of, I guess you say, plussing your rocket ship. If you want to create like screws or bolts to place all along here, we can do that. It's very simple. We're going to create polygon primitive, and let's go to polygon. Let's go to cube. I'll hold shift to create this really big cube, like that. And then I'll go to mesh, smooth. Okay. So now that we smoothed out this polygon cube, I'll select half of those faces and press delete. And this is what we're left with. Okay. If I press 3, it's going to smooth out a little bit. I'll press R and kind of flatten it. Okay. Now, I'll go back into the front view. I'll hold X to snap it to the grid. I'll go to create polygon primitive cube. And I'll create a cube that is like that width. I'll press Control D and I'll rotate it 90 degrees. So I'll select these two cubes, mesh, combine, and then I will select this object, hold shift, click on that, go to mesh, booleans, difference. Oops, let's try the other way around. Click on that first, the round shape, hold shift, click on this shape, mesh, booleans, difference. Okay. Alright, so it's creating a little bit different shape than what I want. So object I want to keep, object I want to delete, mesh, booleans, and difference. Alright, it's actually doing it the opposite way, so okay. So it's actually giving me a really weird shape, but we'll go with this. I'll go to mesh, display, reverse. I'll click on all of these faces here. And then, alright, this is actually not the correct way to do it, so I don't want to keep going forward. I'm going to duplicate this and try it again. This shape, I'm going to go to mesh, smooth. I'll click this guy, hold shift, mesh, booleans, difference. Alright, so it still gives me the same issue. We're just going to add rivets. I'll double click on that, press Control E, press R, scale it down, Control E, and then move it out. I'll go to my front view. I'll hold X and snap it to the center of my object. I'll press R, scale it down, and I'll move it like right about here. Scale it down a little bit more. I'll press W and I'll hold V to snap it right in the center of my object. And I'll push it back so it's touching the geometry. So I'm pressing F to like frame in really fast. I'll hold D and V simultaneously and snap it to the very top of my rocket ship. So I want to make sure it's right there in the center. D, V. And so now when I'm going to hold D and just bring it straight down in the y-axis. It's still right in the center. So I'll go to my channel box editor. I'll press Control D press E to rotate, and I like that distance. I'll press Shift D and keep pressing Shift D until it goes all the way around. So that's just a quick and easy way to add a higher level of detail to your rocket ships, and I hope that you enjoy.